1 in 3 is intended for mature audiences. Episodes contain explicit content and may be triggering as they often include violence and other varying forms of abuse such as emotional, psychological, sexual, and physical. In most cases, names have been changed to protect all involved. Please note, statements and opinions of guests do not necessarily reflect those of my own. Hi, Warriors. Welcome to 1 in 3. I'm your host, Ingrid. In episode 47, Amanda describes characteristics associated with narcissistic personality disorder. In this episode, she further details her personal experiences, including her healing journey and what she is planning to do to help others. Here is Amanda with a conclusion of her story.
So I was removed in October of 2022. In November, I just sat down. I had all this nervous energy because I was in fight or flight. I was stuck still in this kind of place of chaos in getting a lawyer, what's going on, what happened, trying to understand it. I just started typing, and it was this continuous Word document, and I created the list. So on the list, I wrote all the abuse, the gaslighting, the manipulation, the lies, everything from asshole to abusive. So one of the things, he removed my car from the family auto policy on 2 different occasions because I didn't agree or obey with him. So he took it off. So actually, I had to call the insurance company, and the woman said to me, "You can get your own policy in the same household. However, you have to tell me that you're a victim of domestic violence." So I had to admit that. And in doing that I wasn't ready. I wasn't there yet. I didn't understand that I was being abused yet. Let's see, when I was looking for a new car in 2021, he told me I better buy a car I can afford on my own since I would be moving out soon. So, yeah, he had started this. I mean, he had been telling me to get the F out for years. Now, I moved out twice, or actually 3 times. I moved out 3 times. Once early on, I called the police. He totally freaked out in 2019, and I called the police. They took him in, and he was charged with second-degree harassment and assault. So that I didn't press charges at the time because, again, I thought, oh, he's working on himself. This is just a little snafu. We're going to get through this. He came back. He cried. He was okay for a little bit, and then things started again, of course. But I had moved out during that time. I moved out for 2 weeks. He called me every day, begged me to come back, and I came back, and I should have never come back. I moved out in May of 2022, so I moved out for a month. Before then, I would come downstairs with a 2-story house in the morning, and I'd wear AirPods every morning, listening to meditation music before I went downstairs to make coffee, just so I could be in a place where I didn't feel reactive, and I couldn't hear what he was saying. So I'd wear AirPods with meditation music, and I would crank it up. So I wouldn't hear him. He would be working in the living room. It was open concept, and, I could hear him talking, but I just ignored him at that point. It was just too much. And I would make my coffee and go upstairs. And luckily at that time, he didn't try to chase me or anything. But I moved out in May of 22 for a month. He asked me to come back. He was going to do all these things for me. The business was for me. I came back. It was good for a couple of weeks, and then it started all over again, and it became worse. So then October happened, and that was the last straw. So as I was moving out in May, he threatened to put all my belongings in the driveway for overnight to pick up. He said, "I'm just going to drag everything out there." He had actually taken everything downstairs that I owned. I never asked him to do it. I didn't tell him to do it. He just started packing up my stuff and put it downstairs and then put it all in the garage. As soon as I moved back into the house, he asked me for money. And of course, I'm like, "Oh, we're working on this." Yes, and I gave it to him. And he promised to repay me. He never did. And I've never really been like that about money. I'm like, "Oh, I'm contributing. He pays, he makes more. He's paying for the house. Of course I can pay for this." And, some of the smaller bills in the house that I pay for. So in the mornings, he liked to start arguments with me before I'd go, and I'd leave to go to one of my schools to teach. So he started an argument with me, and entire way there. I'm listening to music. I'm trying to change my perspective. I'm trying to get out of that feeling so I can be effective in my school. So I can walk into my school and work with my teachers and the students that I worked with a smile on my face and really concentrate on what I'm trying to teach that day. I left for work. I had a Chihuahua named Charlie. He passed in 23, but I left for work and came back to find him in a crate in the middle of the bed, closed. Like the dogs, we had 3 dogs total, and they all ended up passing away, but 3 dogs total. And they kind of roamed free, and he was home all day. He would let them out. And, his dog was crated when he left anywhere. But my dog was always free, to roam. Decided that he needed to be crated because the other dog was crated, and he decided to put it in the middle of the bed so I would see it and get upset. Instead of like next to the other dog on the floor like a normal person, right? No. He said the electrical circuit in the room that was my office was overloaded and that I can't get electric to the room anymore. So he went downstairs and pulled the fuse from that room so I couldn't work if I was up there on my computer at night. I couldn't see because he had pulled, and he says, it's too much. So we have to, one of the rooms can't be lit. I mean, this is just, how insane is that?
It really is. Like, how do you even think of that? That's so weird.
I don't know. Right. Where do you get this stuff? And then there was, okay, so with that, another bizarro thing was, he said, we had wireless. The wireless router was in the basement. My computer and office was on the second floor. He took the wireless router and was walking around. He unplugged it, was walking around with it in a messenger bag that he had. So I couldn't work anymore. So I'm in the middle of typing. All of a sudden, the wireless is gone. And I get up and I'm like, what's going on? And he's like, oh, this needs to be, recalibrated. And I got to take it to the computer store. And I'm like, why? Wasn't born yesterday. And that's not true. There's nothing you need to go and change in anything. It's working just fine. You decide to unplug it and carry it around. And then he went in the bedroom and locked himself in and with the router and told me that I should leave him alone, that I'm harassing him, that I'm bothering him, that I'm the problem again. Right?
Amazing.
So, yeah, it's just the scenarios that he would set up. And then when I would say anything against it, defend myself or express my disgust, then I'm the problem, right? I should just be an acceptance of the crazy. He told me that he wouldn't attend, my cousin passed away. He told me he wouldn't attend my cousin's funeral because she didn't attend our wedding years prior. She wasn't there, so he's not going to go to her funeral. I just looked at him and left. I couldn't deal with it. There are also papers in court that he lied to the court about how much money he made and how much he paid out. So we both had to fill out these forms about, money going in, money coming in, money coming out, and he lied about how much was coming in and going out. And unfortunately, the W-2 doesn't lie. So we had a little bit of a problem getting financials. So we did some personal development early on. I started it, and it really helped me. It worked well for me. And then he got involved. So it's called the 90-day game. And once you do the 90-day game and you go through it, you have a coaching call every day. Once you go through it, you can become the coach. So he decided to coach this 90-day game, and I was against it. Not because I didn't want him to help other people, but because I knew what kind of crazy that this was going to create. Not only was this creating a monster, but I knew that because he was working so hard to impress all of these people that the backlash was coming. And then that's not truly who he is. So it was going to come back at me. And I was right. So as he's, pretending to be this other person with his group of other coaches and with the people he was actually coaching behind closed doors, he was verbally attacking me. And he was actually working his triangulation magic and telling me that these people didn't like me. They didn't want to hear what I had to say. So somehow my presence, because they'd have meetings at my house, and I would go upstairs just to be respectful. But I shouldn't be listening. I shouldn't be hearing it. And I'm not a part of this. This is his thing. Some of the other terrible things, he stole my wallet and hid it for 3 weeks after lying to police. I had called the police after that happened. I had to get a new license. I got new credit cards. I saw him do it. I was down the hall, saw him walking across from my office to the bedroom with my wallet in his hand, and he locks the door. And 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in my office, and there was like this little cabinet that I had. He stood there, he opened the door, and the wallet is sitting in there. And he just looks at me, and he walks off. And I'm like, I didn't even know. I was like frozen. I didn't even know what to do. The lock on the bedroom door, the handle, he took the whole thing off. He switched it with the one that attached the laundry room or the breezeway from the garage. There's like a little laundry room and then the kitchen. Well, there is a door that you can close for the garage. He took that doorknob, the master bedroom doorknob, and switched them. So he had the key. So he could lock himself in the bedroom. He could barricade himself in there. So whenever I was knocking on the door, trying to get my clothes, my toiletries, I have to work, I have to leave, I was the problem. because that's not my house and that's not my room. And I would become upset because time, and I had ended up, that night I had slept, downstairs in the living room, or I had a little roll out bed that I put in my office. And because of that, he would lock himself inside and not let me in. And say that it was because I was the abuser and whatnot. I'm like, I just want to get my stuff. So those are some of the things that he would do. I have another video. Is I pulled up home and he was walking around my parked car, recording me with his phone as I sat with the doors locked, and just walking around recording me. And if you could see the video, it's super creepy. And I'm like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Back to social media. So that was part of the he didn't hit me. So those are some of the things that I posted there. And I have other things that I posted on that page as well. I talked about the choices he made, how he behaved during the marriage. And we were married for almost 7 years total, together for eight and a half. And there was definitely an incline in that discard phase. So you can hear in some of the things that I said. And some of those were out of order. So it started off just kind of him being a jerk and rude. And then it went into, gosh, this is actually abuse. And it took me a long time to figure that out, actually. Because at the beginning, he mirrored me. He said he wanted everything I did. He wanted that marriage, the family, the business. He love bombed me. He rented the marquee outside a small movie theater to ask me to marry him and took me there. Yeah, so I'm standing on the sidewalk looking up, Amanda, will you marry me? His name. We did everything together at the beginning. We made a lot of plans. And he would have a little bit of anger stuff going on, but then he would make up for it. Or then he would apologize. So looking back, I did experience his anger issues early on, but I thought he's actively working on himself. He's dedicated to personal development. It seemed like a short time that it was working until it didn't. And then that person that I thought I knew, the person he presented, his representative, went further and further away. And the real him started coming out. And the other thing about the narcissist is they're very much a creature of habit. So let's go back to the restraining order of October. In October of 22, I found out through my research that he also filed a restraining order against his ex-wife in 2010 while they were divorcing. So that was part of it. Now, did it actually go through? I don't know. I couldn't find the information. I wasn't going to ask his ex-wife. So, and that's public knowledge. That's on CaseNet. I also found out that he had a temporary order against him and then a full order granted in May of 2016 for a year. So let's look at the timeline. So I met him in January of 2016. He had just broken up with his girlfriend earlier that month in the worst way. Now, he had lied to me and told me that they split up in October of the previous year. So I thought, oh, okay, he's got the rest of October, November, December, most of January. That's the 3.5 months, 4.5 months, that he broke up. So we started dating around the end of I met him the end of January. They broke up in January. She moved out. Then she had the order 6 months. So May of 2016, it was expired. So she decided to go for a full order of protection. And so that went from May of 16 to May of 2017. We were married in July of 2017. So 2 months after this order expired, we were married. So the whole time I was dating him, got engaged, and almost got married, right? He had a restraining order against him and had the record sealed. I had no idea. It's not on CaseNet. It wasn't on CaseNet. He made sure of that. And it just blows my mind that our ending was, you know, more dramatic than that one. Things just got worse. So I left. So let's talk about that. So I left, I got out, and my head was spinning. That was October. November, I started writing the list, and I just started writing down everything that was happening, all the dates, everything that was going on. I had friends calling me. I had two of those guy friends call me and tell me, text me or call me and tell me that he misses me, he wants me back. He was talking about me and how he wanted, things to work out. And I said, nope, no. I will only speak to him if I have to through this divorce, and that's it. And I'm done. Let's talk about healing. So on that journey, it's taken some time. It's been, 2 years, and it's still in the works. It's not 100%. So I was removed in October. Then I joined a gym again in January. So it took me a couple of months. I, got through the holidays in January. I'm like, okay, I joined the gym. I got on the treadmill and the elliptical. I joined yoga classes, and I realized I had so much nervous energy that I had to get out. And so, it felt a lot better to get out, to get moving. And also I was starting to clear my mind. The fog was starting to lift. I felt like this chaotic, like every time I would think of a scenario that happened, it would make my brain spin. It was so uncomfortable, and it actually hurt. So, I was living in fight or flight, and I didn't even realize it for a long time. And when I did, I'm like, okay, now I'm here. What do I do? And it took some time to regulate my nervous. And I'm still working on all of those things. And even today I go to the gym, I do yoga, I added Pilates, I meditate, I sit, I get quiet because I felt like I lost that ability. And I listen to my intuition, and I'm learning to trust it again. And, sometimes it takes time.
I think trust is a big deal because you get so lost in this chaos of the relationship that you're in, the apologies and the abuse, and it goes back and forth. You question your reality. And when you get out, I think it is difficult to trust yourself again. Like, understand what is real, what is okay, and what's you. So I think that's a big.
And you bring up a good point, because that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to erode who you are. They want to take that person away. So you're their puppet. You're their extension. You're not you anymore. You're just what they tell you to do. You aren't your own person. So all of those qualities that they saw in you in the beginning, they think by taking that away from you, that's somehow they're gaining. They're controlling. They're winning. Because if he can't have those qualities, neither can I. And he's going to make sure of it, right? By trying to snuff me out, trying to steal my energy. Yes, learning to trust my intuition again, because I did have some red flags along the way. And I didn't listen. I thought, and he took advantage of the fact that I have empathy. I'm a special ed teacher. And, he can be helped. He's working on it. So, I told myself those things, even though, I really should have listened to my intuition, and I should have left the first time. So I will say that my short-term memory has been affected. My balance coordination has been affected. But it's improving. It is definitely improving. And I reiterated everything I knew about narcissistic personality disorder, so I could be in acceptance of his actions, because they weren't about me. I'm not going to take it personally. And what I learned, first of all, they all, like I mentioned, they all work from the same handbook. So it's not just me. I read other stories from other women who've experienced the exact same thing. And it's just what I could take my emotions out of it by saying, okay, this is just what they do. This isn't in relation to me at all, because I also know he had treated past women in his life the exact same way. So what I concentrated on was the four areas of my life. I have the mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. So I had to sit down and take stock of all of those things. Where am I at in all these areas? Like, I myself, I feel like I'm an pretty emotionally sound person. I'm pretty stable, which is probably another reason why he chose me. I had to take a look at emotional, spiritual. I've been on a spiritual journey for the last 10 years when I turned 40. And so some of the things I learned in some of those teachings and then with personal development, I think has really helped me to get through this a lot faster as well, because I went back to what I knew. I can change my perspective. I can choose. That's not to say that I wasn't upset, and that upset actually turned to anger. So I thought, okay, how am I going to use this anger? Because I got to get it out in a healthy way. I need to use it in a healthy way. What am I going to do? And so finally, I could work through this anger and just be in acceptance of, this is who he is. This is what happened. What now? What do I do with it now? What are the lessons I learned now? And it became abundantly clear that I am supposed to help other people, other women who have been in this situation. And I understand it happens both ways, but my perspective as a woman married to a narcissistic man. So how can I help these women to understand and to help themselves? So that's what I'm starting to do now. And I asked myself, why did I accept this treatment? So I had to do the deep dive into my past and take a look at my childhood and take a look at why I was always a yes girl and I was always a people pleaser. And why was I doing that? And why didn't I leave sooner? The first time he showed me who he was and he was arrested, why didn't I leave then? I thought I could help him. I thought, as a special ed teacher, I thought if I loved him enough, if I gave him strategies, things like that, I thought that he would see that and he would want it enough, and that he could see that I'm trying to make this work and he could try to make this work as well. So I thought if we could see that I'm trying to work with him, and the more I tried to help, the more he pushed me away. I was trying to get him admitted. I was trying to get him to see a doctor. I was telling him something was wrong with him. That's how he saw it. And so I had to take a look at that and realize that I myself have a codependent nature. And it's something that I learned a long time ago, apparently. I was trying to help someone who wasn't doing anything to help himself. At the beginning he was, and then he stopped. That's not my responsibility. It's his. Although, I was stuck being around him and living with him at the time. It was just the opposite. He sabotaged everything that I was trying to do and trying to help. And so I had to be in acceptance of that. It's not my responsibility. And he's done that in other relationships. I had a picture of the summer that I met him, and after I met him, and then the day I left, I took a picture of myself in the mirror. And at that point, I knew who I was, but when I looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize that person. I didn't recognize her. And I'm like, what the hell happened? And was so exhausted from the chaos, the arguing, the trying to defend myself, the standing up for myself that he calls abuse. I was just done. And I knew at that point that I couldn't, there was no way I was ever going to go back. So this was also a big reminder for me in looking at him that the world within me is the most important versus the world around, because no one can tell you who you are. No one's going to validate you. You have to have your own inner strength, your own inner value first. And, it's great when someone compliments you. It's great when someone gives you kudos or whatever, but your self-worth comes from within. And you are enough and you are worthy because you're here, because you're a human being, for no other reason. I mean, that's it. That is all you need to know, that you have value because you're a person, because you're a human being. And the only person I can control is myself. I can only self-reflect and help and myself and create change for myself, and hopefully let what I've learned help other women in what I'm doing going forward, in coaching them and talking about my story and how I've helped myself. So I continue to work in all these four areas because this is my rebuilding phase. includes sharing my story, helping other women, and opening up about such a sensitive topic. I'm very direct and very open. I will tell you it's not, I don't think that this is something I should be ashamed of. I don't feel like it's something that I need to keep quiet about. And it had been bubbling up for a long time. And I needed to feel ready. I needed to feel that stability in myself. And I'm there and I've got it. And so I decided, it's finally time for me to say something. And so I spoke out. So, coach, author, speaker, that's where I'm headed with this next chapter. And it's become really clear that, this is something that I'm going to continue to do. And so also, right now with this podcast, I am offering a free narcissistic abuse recovery journal for any listener. And I've included a link in my bio. So when you click on my bio and the little world that you have down there, you can click on it, put in your information, it'll come to your email. And it's about 17, it's pretty robust. It's about 17 pages. So there's some education there, and then self-affirmations. It tells you what they do, healing reminders, daily healing affirmations, gray rocking methods, like what is it, how to help yourself in that situation, self-awareness, some of your habits. What are you grateful for today? What did you enjoy about today? Where do you want your life to go? What do you see for your life? Things like that. So forgiveness. Oh, that's huge. Forgiving yourself for not knowing, forgiving yourself for not making a decision you wished you would have sooner because you just weren't in the place. So I think forgiveness and dealing with some of that guilt, especially if you have children as well, you have to just realize that you were doing the best that you could in that moment in time, and you just move forward. So there's some help there, limiting beliefs. There's a lot of information here. If any of your readers want to download this journal, it's free. For something that I can help contribute. And then going forward, I'm going to create a course. I'm going to be speaking more about this. I do have a book in me, as I realized in preparing for this podcast and writing down some information. I wanted to share that, we could be here all day. So yeah, that's basically what I have for today. If you have anything else that you wanted to ask, or
Okay. Well, I was going to touch on a few things that I thought were important. So first of all, that's awesome with the journal. I love that. And thank you. That's going to be super helpful. I think a few things with the healing part, with the self-reflection and realizing it's not your fault. So one thing I was saying to my therapist, I found myself saying, I hate that I let myself get into that. And she's like, no, 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 you didn't do it. And it made it sound like I was taking the accountability for getting into that relationship. So that's definitely part of healing. I think you realize when you get to a point where, it's all about taking care of what's inside of you and not trying to convince other people of what happened or what is the truth. And you realize like that's it. They can choose to believe what they want to believe, and you're at peace with that. I think that is a huge clue that you're really doing well with healing. It is super, super important. You kind of mentioned how there's the real him. So I think for people who are in these relationships, it's very important to understand that that person you met at the beginning, the love bombing person, that person is not a real person. That's the mask or the costume or whatever you want to call it that they're wearing to get you in. And I know there's a quote, and I know it's somebody important that said it, but it's when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them.
Maya Angelou.
Yes. Okay. I thought it was her, and I didn't want to say it because I wasn't sure it was her. And that's the thing. Like the real person is who they're showing you at the end. This I talked about with someone in a previous episode. Is a lot of times people think that victims are weak, and that's why these abusers prey on specific people. And I think you mentioned it beautifully, and that's in the previous episode we were trying to convey the same thing, that it's they're looking for something within you that they want. They're parasites, and they want to suck whatever energy it is that they see in you. They want that for themselves. So I think you mentioned that, and you said it was great how you said that. Oh, I think it's also important to, like, when they ask to get you back, it's not because they love you. It's not because they miss you. It's because they need to win. You're the possession. If they were not the one who decided that it was over and they were letting you go, then you need to come back to them so they can be the winner, more or less. I hate the fact that so many of us have had to go through these events that we've gone through to get to the point where we are. But I love what people have done with their trauma and their abuse, and they've healed themselves, and now they want to take it to the next step of, where we may have felt alone or we may have felt confused and unsure of what to do. I love how certain individuals are trying to make sure that someone else doesn't feel that same way, and they're able to have the tools to understand that someone has forged this path ahead of you and they're here to help you get through it a little bit easier. I love what you're doing. I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything in closing that you want to share? Or
I think I've covered a lot of it.
I think you did.
Yeah. I also have a link to my Facebook there if anybody wants to read what I've posted that I'm including, and then I will be adding to that as well if anybody wants to follow or friend me. That's fine too. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you inviting me. So I think it's super important that all of us are joining together to do this work for
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming on. I would like to once again thank Amanda for coming on 1 in 3 and sharing her experiences with us. Thank you for listening. I have shared the link to Amanda's profile in the show notes. I will be back next week with another episode and another guest. Until then, stay strong, and wherever you are in your journey, always remember you are not alone. Find more information, register as a guest, or leave a review by going to the website 1in3podcast.com. That's the number 1, IN, the number 3, podcast.com. Follow 1 in 3 on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1 in 3 podcast. To help me out, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 1 in 3 is a .5 Pinoy production. Music written and performed by Tim Crow.